Joker, Folie, Deux is the long-awaited follow-up to 2019's Joker, directed by Todd Phillips. That film, again, made over $1 billion. It starred Joaquin Phoenix and won 2 Oscars. Was nominated for many more. Won best actor for Joaquin Phoenix and best original score by Hildur Gudnadottir, who returns to this film as well. So we find Arthur Fleck in the sequel a couple of years after the events of the first film, where he has murdered 5 people, and he is in Arkham Asylum and is being put on trial for these murders. Arthur's not having a good time. He's Arkham Asylum is a bit like a Shawshank prison. It's real rough. He's beaten. He's bullied. Lots of police brutality in this movie, kind of surprisingly. He's not doing great, but his life has changed when he meets Lee, otherwise known as Harley Quinzel, played by Lady Gaga, of course. Big role for her. They meet, they fall in love. She's obsessed with him, but she wants him to be Joker, wants him to really bring out that side of his persona, not Arthur. And she encourages him, and he starts, this trial. The trial starts going kind of better, and he eventually dons that persona. That you've seen the footage of the makeup in the courtroom. That's kind of our main setup, and then we also have a number of musical numbers that happen throughout the film, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Todd Phillips says this is not a musical, though there are musical numbers, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But it's been very controversial. Sorry, I'm losing my place. It's been very controversial and divisive. Zach, what did you think?
So we got tickets to see Joker in 70mm IMAX, which I'm excited to talk about the format. There's one of 11 70mm prints in the world. We saw it second run through. Second time light went through film, we were watching Joker, which is really cool. Like, it's a great way to see it. But in the lead up to seeing it Thursday night, we'd started to see early reviews because Warner Brothers did not show this movie to anybody outside of Venice Film Festival. No test screenings. Nobody watched it. Reportedly, Todd Phillips was like in a cabin in the woods. He was on a ranch somewhere with no internet when this came out. And we started to see reviews, and we started to see the Rotten score come out, and it just kept dropping throughout the day. And I was like, oh no, oh boy, what's happening here? But we try to be objective on this show. We want to make sure we're going into everything with an open mind. And I thought there's going to be some things that are going to work for this movie just right off the bat. We're probably going to have another banger score. The first film had an incredible soundtrack, like incredible work, fantastic. Looking forward to it. B, performances. Joaquin Phoenix is pretty much always a hit. Lady Gaga is probably going to work real hard at it. I think it's going to be a good time. C, the format. The visuals are going to be fantastic. Cinematographer Lawrence Sher is returning from the first film to do this one. Also shot The Hangover with Todd Phillips, Small World. And it's going to look great, right? Like light punching through darkness. It's going to be big shadows, makeup. It's going to be cool. And I could say that all of those things are in Joker, Folie à Deux. Like, they're all here. All of those things work. But the things that don't work are wildly damning. And for a long feature and a follow-up to something I think people were really excited about, it ends up feeling pretty disappointing. And I'm looking forward to talking about why. We don't do spoilers on this show. We won't be spoiling the film for you. But let's kind of talk about, the shape of it, I think, and what doesn't work here.
Right. So one thing that I've heard about the movies is that enjoying cinema is all about managing expectations. And so I want to get into plot and what kind of movie this is and is not. There's a lot of people who are disappointed because it is not a Marvel movie. It's not, full of action and jokes and that kind of thing. It's another character study, but it's very different from the first film where we saw Arthur kind of devolve into this character of the Joker. This movie's about kind of the failures of the legal system in prison. It's more of a prison drama / legal drama. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of like the Shawshank Redemption, which is a pretty brutal movie in large parts of it. It's more, Todd Phillips is interested in that. He's interested in this idea of spectacle. I was reminded of Jordan Peele's Nope, which is also about people's obsession with spectacle and kind of what they'll throw away to see that. And it's a little bit what happens here. Lady Gaga's character, Lee, is obsessed with Arthur, not because she loves Arthur, but she loves Joker and she loves that persona. And this is what Todd Phillips is interested in kind of navigating and exploring. He's not here to give you the Joker, which is what I keep saying, like the clown prince of crime. He's doing a different kind of character study that kind of condemns fans of the first film. We saw a guy in our screening who was like in full Joker makeup and costume, and it's like it's not the kind of movie you dress up to. It'd be like if you dressed up as the Joker to see the Shawshank Redemption or Schindler's List. It's like, no, not going to dress up for that. So it's a completely different kind of film, tonally, plot wise, and all. Go ahead, Zach.
No, I feel like its biggest criticism that I've heard from people is that it is a courtroom drama, which, like, I would love to say it's not that, because it's a musical and you don't even get into the courtroom for a little while. Like almost the whole first act of the film is happening like exclusively inside Arkham and inside this kind of hospital. But ultimately, like, it ends up being a review of the previous film. Like, it is a courtroom drama covering the events of the last movie and analyzing them. Like, and for a sequel, that's a weird choice. And I've been struggling to think of other movies that do this. Like when the second film in a series is strictly reviewing and reanalyzing the events of the first film. I thought of like Back to the Future 2, but that's much more dynamic and much more kinetic than Joker 2. One of the things Joker 2 has going for it is its subtitle, Folie, Deux, which is a shared psychosis or shared delusional disorder. When this got announced, it got announced right alongside Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. Big kerfuffle about her and Margot Robbie having the role, but ultimately everybody kind of figured that's what that was hinting towards, right? We're hinting towards Harley and Joker, but really it's more about this alternate identity of Joker versus Arthur Fleck, who is Joaquin Phoenix, right? Who's our character in the first film. And in the first film, Arthur Fleck ends up kind of becoming this Joker persona, becoming this Joker role. And this movie, from its opening shot, this is kind of goofy animated sequence, kind of sets up the idea that these are two separate things. These are two separate identities. And our characters are basically disputing whether or not Arthur Fleck is one and the same, whether he is Joker and he is responsible for these crimes, or if they're kind of two alternate things and Arthur's really just crazy and he's a good guy deep down, right? And like that's not where anybody wanted this franchise to go. Like that's not where anybody thought Joker 2 needs to be, right? Like I think people wanted the Clown Prince of Crime, and Joker Folie Deux is like very unsatisfyingly not giving it to you.
That was my complaint of the first film. I remember when I first saw it that, it takes him the whole movie to become the Joker. He doesn't do any criming or scheming. And so I was like, oh, well, surely that will happen in the sequel. And then it doesn't. And Todd Phillips purposely, he was allowed to do what he wanted to do. And I'm a little bit warmer on this. I think it's really interesting. But if I were an exec and I read the script, I would say, I was like, I like this. This is brilliant. No, people are going to hate this. So there's a little bit of that going on where it's just, there's a disconnect between the audience. Cause like I said, if I would have read the script, I would have said, there's no way the audience goes for this. It's just a different kind of movie, and it's almost condemning. It reminds me of Matrix 4 a little bit in that it's kind of condemning its audience and condemning the people obsessed with it. It's a little bit of commentary on like people that are obsessed with true crime and like serial killers and things like that. And because what Todd Phillips is saying is like, Arthur Fleck is kind of just a loser that had this delusion of grandeur, this persona of the Joker that everyone liked, and that made him feel good. But he's like, no, he's a sick individual. He's a murderer. He's not anyone to be, dressed up as. Which I feel like he hates that people dress up and dance down those stairs, like in the first one. So it's a really different examination of that. Also interesting to say, there's a cartoon short at the beginning that kind of introduces and lays out the entire story in cartoon form. So another interesting touch.
Yeah, I do want to talk about some of the stuff that works. I know I opened at the top with like, here's the things I was expecting: big visuals, big soundtrack, big performances. All of those I think work. I really do. Like the many of the elements, the building blocks of Joker Folie I do are good. So it's a little surprising when you step back and look at the full picture, it doesn't really come together the way you'd expect. The movie looks great, especially in the format. If you can see it in IMAX, you should. If you could see it in 70 millimeter, you definitely should. I think there's probably maybe a couple more weeks of screenings left. We'll see, depending on how it's based on how it's been doing at the box office. I don't actually know if Warner Brothers is going to be running it that much longer, but the way light punches through darkness in this movie is fantastic. Also, I can't remember the last time smoking a cigarette looked as good as it looks in Joker Folie I do. Oh my God. Everybody in this hospital smokes and it always looks awesome. I don't even smoke and I wanted a cigarette. It looks so delightful as this like slow burn kind of. Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are both tremendous. Also, you have a pretty good cast of supporting characters. Brendan Gleeson is in the film. Catherine Keener plays Arthur's lawyer. She's a lot of fun. Harry Lottie plays Harvey Dent. I haven't seen him in anything, but I think he's in that show Industry on Max, I think I read. And I know people say he's good stuff over there. Steve Coogan shows up. A few other characters that are a lot of fun that I don't want to spoil. Everybody is good in it. And the music, I think, is good, but the problem is the musical pieces, I think, aren't good. And that leads us into a weird place where Warner Brothers and Todd Phillips have been saying it's not really a musical, but it kind of functionally is. So it's a weird thing to say it isn't when, like, it definitely feels like it's a musical. It's just not a well-made musical. That's the problem. The musical parts are dry and bland and visually uninteresting and usually like a couple of long takes just stuck together in editing with like a medium shot. It's like, that's it? You guys didn't do anything like big and grand? I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
So yeah, the musical numbers are a good thing to get into. So the reason I think Todd Phillips said this isn't a musical is it's not a musical in the sense that people aren't breaking into song and dance within the reality of the movie, and the musical numbers don't advance the plot. Really, what they are kind of a heightened expression of the emotions. When emotions get real big, either like big, like exciting, fun, or sad, that's when we break into song. The very first song that Arthur sings is in the prison, and it's when he finds out he's going to be going to trial, and that the trial is going to be televised, and he first sees that people are like excited to see him, and he gets really excited about this moment, and then he breaks into this song in the prison, which is essentially always just happening in his head. He's not like, none of the musical numbers are happening within the realm of the film. They're all kind of imaginary. And so it's meant to express emotion, but it's not necessarily moving the plot forward. So I can see why he would say that it's not a musical. Most people would consider this musical still, or at least heavy musical elements. I think they're fine. They're good pieces. They just kind of go on too long most of the time.
Yeah. Also, it's mostly a 60s musical send-up with 60s musical songs. And like, people don't know those anymore. And like, that does create an interesting space for Arthur and Harley to have this like totally one-on-one connection that other people don't understand. And they're both a little crazy. So obviously it'd be a kooky connection, right? So like, it's a unique and niche thing that they are both into this specific kind of music, but general audiences aren't, dude. Like, most people are checked out. And like, when you put that with a couple of numbers that are emotional, but visually flat and shot in a gray Arkham Asylum with dark walls where nothing is really happening in the background, people get up and go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, that's when you're getting a popcorn refill in a 2 hour and 18-minute picture. Like, it just ends up feeling long, which doesn't help because those are supposed to be your moments that are kind of emotional. And then it's weird for the director to back away from that and be like, well, it's not really that kind of picture, and back away from all of it. I mean, it seems like from what we can tell, Todd Phillips knew that what he was making was uniquely divisive. Like, he knew that people were not going to love it. And ultimately, like Andy mentioned, it seems like he's kind of roasting the audience of the first movie, which is a weird choice because you have something that like dudes are getting dressed up in Joker gear to come see, and then to have them sit there and watch a movie where like you're just telling them you're a
loser if you
dude, like guy, like boy, geez. Like it's a choice. My man's an auteur. He's making his own kind of movie, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the musical sequences, what I want to say, because I listened to some interviews, they did the Les Miserables thing where they recorded live on set to allow the actors to act more through the songs, like, and they're interested in the emotion, not like having perfect notes, perfect like voices. And what they did is they would do the takes and they would improvise, like no two takes were the same. And then when they got kind of what was best, then they had to write the entire musical arrangement around it, which is really challenging. And like Arthur Fleck, he's not a great singer. He doesn't sound very good a lot of time, but that's kind of the point. He's real rough around the edges, and that's very challenging to do as a vocalist, to like purposely not sing well and to sing like harsh. There's a point where the Joker sings a very sad song, and kind of he gets more sad as it goes on, and his voice starts to crack and break as like tears are starting to come up. And that's very impressive from like a technical point. So I was interested from a music perspective, kind of how they put this together. And I think there are some good ideas. And again, it's supposed to be emotion. That's why they were more interested in picking like songs that match the emotions they wanted, and not so much as just like, well, what's going to please the audiences. I didn't mind the musical sequences as much, but a lot of people were like, oh, I didn't even know this was a musical. Why is this in here? And that's not helping it either.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be classic Hollywood marketing if they just kind of didn't tell people it's a musical till they show up, and then half the audience is surprised and somebody starts breaking a song. But I do want to say before I wrap things up, because I feel like I'm starting to talk in circles, I do think there are some emotional high points in this movie. There are a couple of those courtroom scenes that hit real good. And it's worth mentioning that like the first movie is dour. Like if you don't remember Joker 1 was 5 years ago now, 2019. Like Arthur Fleck's life is not good, dude. It's bad. And like it doesn't get better over the course of the movie. Like nobody cares about him. Nobody wants him. So when he finds somebody who truly does in Harley Quinn, it's very meaningful, right? Like it means a lot. But that first film is a tragedy, and this second film is a response to that tragedy, and that brings with it like a couple of reprises of moments that were like really challenging in that first movie and are really heartfelt and are like really turned out. Again, Phoenix and Gaga do a great job here. They're not the only ones. There's other people that are in here that I think are a treat to see when they arrive in the film that are really, really tremendous, like doing really good work. And like that comes out, that shows. But I think it just feels bloated. I think it feels like too much. I think it reads like an epilogue to the first movie that probably could have been a little tighter than a 2.5 hour feature, 2 hour, 18-minute feature. But I don't know. I mean, obviously it's getting divided in the cinema score. I think it's got like a 33 on Rotten Tomatoes or something, which means like a third of people liked it. A third thought it was pretty good, but the other 2/3 figured it was a pass. Any other thoughts on this one before recommendations, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Joker Folie?
So this is, I feel like my recommendations are getting more and more complicated. I think if you're interested in it, and again, manage expectations, know what you're getting into. It's a prison drama. It's a courtroom drama. It's part musical. It's not a Marvel film. It's not, he's not going to become the crown prince of crime. It's a meditation on the failures of the legal system and the prison system. If any of that interests you, I would say check it out. I think it is really well made. We saw it in 70 millimeter, and some of it looked incredible. Seeing Lady Gaga in 70 millimeter was really astonishing. So I think technically it's real made. If you're on the fence, maybe save it for streaming so you can watch it a few months from now and see. And if all that sounds awful, then I would say soft pass. So kind of complicated this week.
Yeah, it's a complicated movie, and I think time might be nicer to it. It's one of those movies that I think a couple of years down the line, people will look back and be like, it's unique and it's different, and that's good because in the genre, especially comic book movies, we need more of that. And like Todd Phillips is definitely doing something different and unique here, but I just don't think it's I don't think it's wanted right now. I don't think people want what this movie is bringing to the table. I think it satisfies everybody involved. I think the characters end in a good place. But man, like audiences just seem to be walking out and saying this was dud. This doesn't work for me. So unrelatable soundtrack, some bland visuals, a long runtime. Like I think you end up with a movie that people just don't really love that much. And it's a shame, especially considering how much it cost and that Warner Brothers doesn't seem to be turning out a profit on it. Hopefully things will turn around soon. with that, we should move into our next segment. Andy, I'm going to be taking the first movie in this, but what do we call this segment?
The trailer park?